Welcome to People I Know Show, a podcast about interesting people, personal growth, and being wrong. I'm Kurt Karstensen. Joining me today is Matt Jones, who I spoke to during my trip to Northern California last week. As you'll hear during the conversation, Matt and I hadn't seen each other in well over a decade, dating back to our time working together for the Alexandria Beetles baseball team of the Northwoods League. We'd talk about our memories from that time of our life, baseball, parenting, and much more, including why Matt says he was wrong about change. The Being Wrong segment from this episode is also on video, which you can watch on the People I Know Show YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to get reminders to watch other videos and to listen to all the episodes of the podcast. And if you haven't already, please take a few moments to leave a rating and a review of People I Know Show on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you might be listening. That's one of the things you can do to help me help the show grow. Also, follow People I Know Show on Facebook or Instagram and interact with the post there is another way to help. Now, to my conversation with Matt Jones. Today, Matt Jones joins me on People I Know Show. And hello, Matt.
Hello, Kurt.
We just saw each other right before I started recording for the first time since, I don't know if you were able to pin this down, but it was probably about 10 or more years ago.
It was. I think I was out there in 2006, maybe 2005. So it's been 10, 12 years. It's been a while.
We know each other because you were the field manager, as they call it, but the head coach of the Alexandria Beetles.
Correct.
Summer collegiate baseball in the years 2002 and 2003.
Correct.
Which were my first 2 years as the play-by-play announcer, which was kind of one of the first pivotal experiences in my life, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here to talk about just that part of your life and my life and how things change in 15 years. But before we get to that, I feel the need to talk about what happened to me this morning because it just happened. I was driving from the San Jose area to Fairfield, California.
Yes.
A place that you spend time in this city ever normally?
No, I drive through it. It's right on Highway 80. It's about halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento. So it is the destination spot for bathroom stops on your way to San Francisco when you're coming from Sacramento.
We also found out today it's a destination for podcast conversations.
Yes. And
tire repairs because on the freeway driving north today, at some point, using a borrowed vehicle from one of my friends that is visiting here, the rear right tire blew out and I had to fix it on the freeway. And 680 was the freeway.
Okay.
And cars are going fast and I wasn't terribly comfortable with the whole thing, but I was able to do it and make my way here. So have you had that type of experience before on the freeways of California or elsewhere?
No. I've been fortunate that all my flat tires have been in my driveway. So it's a lot easier to put the spare on in my driveway when the average mile per hour of the passing vehicle is less than 20, or as a kid on a Hot Wheel or something.
Yeah, that's an experience. I guess now that I'm done with it and I'm safely sitting here with you, I'm glad it's happened to know that I can do it.
At least it was the passenger side, not the driver's side. So you were not hanging butt out into the slow lane.
I'm an optimistic person, and I thought about all these things. Like, okay, yeah, that wasn't the case. So I felt like I had a chance to survive should something terrible happen.
Right.
And that I was able to do it kind of quickly, and I'd done it before, so I knew what I was doing. I didn't really know that there was a specific patrol designed to come help people in that situation, or maybe these guys are for hire, but some work trucks pulled over just as I was finishing to offer to help me, but I'd pretty much already gotten it myself.
I'm not aware of a patrol. It was probably just somebody trying to be nice.
Nope, there was patrol vehicle, like California Highway. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I'm curious. Now, it's a good thing that they have it. I didn't know it was there.
Right. Well, there you go. So I learned something today, too.
Good. I think you dial 511. I started noticing these signs after I already fixed my tire that, I can dial 511 and maybe someone could help me. I don't know.
Yeah, I know there are call boxes all the way throughout the freeways that you can walk to, and they go to a call center, and they know exactly where you're at, and you tell them what your problem is. So maybe it's all connected with that. Maybe.
I'm curious. Let's step away from that topic as it's fresh on my mind, and I'm kind of winded from the walk over here because the car is still being repaired. you and I, as we just said, hadn't seen each other in years, but the 2002, 2003 summers, we saw each other every day. As you see a lot of people traveling around in baseball, you see a lot of people, the same people every day. And some people you get along with pretty well. Some people maybe you kind of wish you weren't in such close quarters with them. If you can be honest and forthcoming, what did you think about me from day one, 2002, and maybe by the end of 2003? What happened? If you can even think back to that time.
Well, no, I can remember. I very clearly remember Curt. In a neutral sense of the word, my first impression was definitely naive. And,
okay.
And I don't say that in a negative way. I mean, certainly not in a positive way, but definitely not in a negative way. It was that you were, we were all young at the time. I wasn't, it's not like I was old then.
You seemed old to me. Now we seem like we're the same age, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was 26 maybe at the time.
And I was 19, I believe.
Yeah, so, I mean, I certainly wasn't old, but like I say, naive would be the word that kind of comes to me. But, and again, I don't mean that in a negative way, just inexperienced, unworldly, that you really kind of were from this little town out in the middle of Minnesota where Browerville, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Browerville. Just pretty unexperienced within the world. So, but I did appreciate the honesty and kind of the eyes wide openness that you had to a lot of things. I mean, it's not like you went and traveled the world, but we did bring in players from all across the country. We had kids from Texas and Florida and California. We had people coming in all from around the whole country with different ideas and different thoughts, and you seemed pretty curious and wide-eyed to the whole thing that, wow, there's people out there that aren't just from Browerville. Yeah,
basically. And that was one of the first times, I would say, the rare foreign exchange student that came to my high school. And then that was the next time in my life where I was exposed to people not from Minnesota. And even though people from California and whatever southern states, they're different. It's even not that different. But to me, it was a big difference hearing people's opinions or the way they dressed. I remember the way I dressed began to change, or at least I was aware that maybe I could change it from back at that time.
Yeah, I think probably as the coach of the team, my dress was probably pretty standard coach wear. So I wasn't aware of dress and clothing.
I remember one of the players commenting on my jean shorts. And I don't know that I definitely haven't purchased another pair of jean shorts. I phased those out sometime around 2002, 2003, I think.
Okay. Left those in the 80s?
Yes.
Left those back with the Seavers on Growing Pains?
Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with him for some people, but it probably doesn't work for me. And I think someone finally pointed that out to me.
Right. Yeah, jean shorts.
And another thing I recall specifically, it was you and maybe some other people. I never was really aware that I had an accent.
Right.
That everyone has an accent. I think you kind of get in your own world of all these other people have accents, but I don't have accents, no matter where you're from, possibly. Right. And you, I believe, are one of the first people to start pointing out some of the words that I said differently than other people speaking English elsewhere.
Like you.
The way in Minnesota we hold the vowel sound differently than other places might.
Yeah, so my first experience with that was in 99. I was an assistant coach in St. Cloud with the River Bats.
Mm-hmm.
And within the first hour of being there, it was really abundant. It was so clear to me that, wow, there is an accent somewhere here. And it was, don't you know? And you want to go get some food? And so I'm kind of fascinated with dialect and people speaking and how that ties into where they're from and all of that. So it doesn't surprise me that I pointed it out to you, that you had an accent. But the reality is up there, I was the one with the accent.
True. Although for my profession at that time, trying to become a high-level sports broadcaster, I think it was in my best interest to kind of phase out, again, some of those words that would make me stand out, possibly in a negative way, as I moved on in my career.
Right. Probably standard hockey would be okay, but if you're looking to get outside of the upper Midwest hockey ring, then some of the oohs and ohs and things like that, you don't hear them too often on a national level.
And people have commented throughout my life at times that they don't notice that much of an accent for me at this point. And if that is true, and I'm not even sure that it is, you were one of the early influences on me recognizing that, yeah, some of these words I could at least be aware that I could say them differently slightly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you do say it different, but at some point, you don't recognize the accent anymore. It's just, that's Curt, and that's your voice, and that's how you talk, and it doesn't become an accent anymore. It's just you. So I don't necessarily hear an accent from you. That's you.
Do I sound the same as I did 15 years ago?
Probably not.
Yeah,
I don't know. That one's tough for me to say.
I think you put a microphone in front of me and my voice changes slightly.
Right.
And that may be the case for a lot of people that are or were broadcasters, or maybe anyone. I don't know.
Well, I forget the field announcer's name.
In Alexandria?
Yeah.
Michael Wright?
Michael Wright.
Michael will be listening to this, I'm sure.
Yeah. So Michael Wright had the microphone voice. I remember talking to him, and he was quite normal, and then all of a sudden the microphone would turn on, and it was a whole different person. So,
but it's a similar voice. It's just it's a part of the broadcaster thing. You put them. It's the personality. I think might, for me, and maybe not for him necessarily, but for some people, the persona slightly changes. I think as you're presenting yourself to an audience instead of presenting yourself maybe to one person.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
And this type of thing here, although the setup is slightly different, we've had recorded conversations, interviews for before or after broadcast in those 2 years. Dozens and dozens of times. So you are one of the most interviewed people by me in my lifetime.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. We used to pre-game interview pretty much every game for 2 years. I think there was one time in Wausau where we switched and I interviewed you before the game.
That was probably good. I wonder whatever happened to that audio. I'm sure.
I'm sure it's somewhere in the storage banks of Michael Wright's garage.
Maybe. I kept a lot of that stuff, but then as you acquire more things, I probably could find it, but I don't know if I have the desire at this point to really.
Well, and I'm assuming that was 2003, because 2002 was when it was you and Gabe Winslow. And I don't remember Gabe being there when we switched that around and I interviewed you before the game. So I'm assuming that would have been 2003 that happened.
Probably. As I spent 5 summers broadcasting games for the Alexandria Beetles of the Northwoods League. And it was different every year. I'd have people on the broadcast with me. I don't know. Did you ever get thrown out of a game and then come on the broadcast with me or be suspended or something?
No, I only got ejected a couple times. That really wasn't my thing. But I did. I think it was 2005. The summer of 2005.
Yes. You did come back.
And I came back, because I remember Mike Metzger was on the Beatles that summer, and he was staying with the Wagners, and I stayed there with them for a couple of nights. And those home games, I went and did the radio show with you. I did the games with you during those games. So, yeah, I think it must have been 2005. Yeah.
So we're looking back at our memory banks here, and I'm curious then as I will promote this, and I'd imagine random people that don't know you or me that well. Sometimes I'm not sure on these conversations how impactful they are, but I know for me, like I was in the area a few years ago and I reached out to you, and in the area means we were still 2 hours away from each other and we weren't able to get together. And I'm finding because I have this podcast project, I've been able to prioritize things like this. Like you're someone that I thought I want to have you on.
Okay.
And if not for this, the microphones and this, I don't know that I would have prioritized in a way to actually make it happen. And I'm finding it to be so just cool and valuable to meet up with some of the people. And you live a lot further away from me than some of the other people I've had on.
Right.
I think it's a really neat thing. But I want to talk more about you and understand what's been happening with your life. You mentioned some of these names. We're meeting today for the first time in over 10 years, 12 years, whatever. Do you see many people from that era of your life anymore?
No, I don't. It's interesting because, and I don't feel like it's as far away as it is. When you say it's 10, 12 years, man, it's been a long time since any of that happened. My last year at UCLA was 2008. So that was, going on 11 years ago. And no, I mean, I think, life just kind of carries you, people different directions. And everybody kind of goes on their own thing. You have good intentions of staying in contact with everybody, but it just kind of doesn't end up happening all that much.
Yeah, I think that's true of most people. And I've thought before, okay, I'm going to reach out to someone from my past every day or every week, and then I start doing it, and I just stop doing it. This has been the first thing so far, and who knows what's going to happen with this, where I've been able to find a new way to make sure it's a priority to get in contact with people from my past or people that I wouldn't have necessarily reached out to in the same way. So I think that is pretty neat. You mentioned UCLA, and we know each other through baseball. Neither one of us has worked in baseball for some years, at least not in a similar capacity. I want to know more about that. That was I assume your passion, your dream to be in baseball coach, whatever capacity, and at some point that becomes more difficult. So tell me about all that.
Well, I mean, at the end of let me back up. The beginning of the 2008 season, we were preseason number 1. And we were supposed to be the best team in the country, Baseball America.
You were an assistant coach with the UCLA Bruins baseball team.
Correct. I was the assistant coach at UCLA.
Which is a pretty big deal. To me, it always was. Those big-time schools being in those staffs is pretty neat.
I loved being there. I enjoyed it a lot. And then we had some injuries and just didn't really end up having the season that we were supposed to have. And through a series of just how things end up working out is I end up being let go at the end of the year. And my wife was pregnant at the time. Angie was pregnant. And I wasn't willing to go and take a job in, Wisconsin or go and move to Tennessee or up and, leave everything and go try and find a job in Florida. So
which for several years you were willing to do those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started out in the Bay Area. I started out coaching high school, and then through a contact that I knew got me in contact with Bob Milano, who's the head coach at Berkeley. And so I went to school and finished up school at Berkeley and was helping kind of as a student coach type thing there. And then that was kind of how I got introduced to the Northwoods League. One of the other assistants was Pat Shine, and he was the head coach in St. Cloud at the time. So from during that time at Berkeley, I didn't go out and coach during the summer, but after that, that's when I started coaching summer ball, and I started getting to know other college coaches from around the country. And I went to Minnesota 3 times, and I went to Boston once, and so I was willing to get up and go and do all kinds of things all the time. And then we moved down to Southern California. At the time, it was UC Irvine. I was at UC Irvine for 1 year before we all went to UCLA. So yeah, at one point, it was definitely something that I would have been up and, I did a phone interview for a job at Notre Dame, and if he'd have offered it to me, I'd have taken it that night and gotten in my little beat up pickup truck with no radio and driven out to Notre Dame. So, but I was in a different place where I wasn't willing to do that anymore. And, so we ended up back up here in Sacramento. My family lives up here. Angie's family lives up here. And I had an opportunity through Mike Metzger, actually. He didn't know this, but where the college coaching, helping kids get into college, there's a guy who runs a company up here, and he worked with Mike Metzger. And because I had coached Mike at UCLA, that was kind of the foot in the door that I had with him. And he offered me a job to help people around here get into college. And so I've been doing that ever since.
And what's that been like, not being in baseball and having this other profession that you must still enjoy, that you've been doing it for so long, but it's not what you set out to do,
right,
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I still would say that my passion is baseball. I for 1 year, I went and coached at Sierra College, which is a junior college out in Rockland. I did that for a year. I planned on doing it for multiple years, but for other reasons, it just didn't work out. And now I'm coaching my son's travel baseball team, 11U travel baseball team. So I still managed to find myself in the middle of baseball somehow, just not at the high-end Division I college level.
I'd imagine, though, doing that is as fulfilling in other ways, that coaching at a different level. It's not coaching big-time star athletes, but you get to spend this time with your son and help him grow.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole different experience. I mean, teaching it from the ground up. I mean, and literally talking about your feet and things like that. This foot has to be in this spot. Whereas, when you're dealing with Brandon Crawford and people like that, you don't ever think about those things. You're focusing on other things as a coach. So it is really different. Fulfilling, yeah, it is. I mean, I think the biggest difference is that at the college level, you really are dealing with people who love baseball. I mean, the only reason that they're still doing it is because they love it. At this level, you're dealing with, 11-year-old kids. They don't really know what they're passionate about or anything like that. And a lot of them are out there because dad makes them be out there. Mm-hmm. And so, you have to find, or at least I have to find ways to entertain myself. But it is definitely fulfilling in other ways. Yes.
Are you also that dad that makes your son be out there and he doesn't want to be out there?
I've never told him he needed to go out and go hit or, hey, we have to go play. I've never done anything like that. He loves baseball as much as I do. I mean, he gets up in the morning and goes and checks box scores and see who signed. And, that's when I was a kid, I used to get up and go grab the newspaper and look at the box scores. And now he logs onto the computer and does it. So. But I've never once told him he had to go do that. It's always been an option for him, and he's never said no. And he's always the one that kind of initiates the whole thing. Hey, we should go hit, or we should go do this. And so,
did you deal with that at higher levels where you could sense that this individual might be very good at the sport, but it's always been pressure from parents or someone to be there? I know some sports you hear some stories like Andre Agassi. I think I remember. And it's maybe some tennis players, for instance. There's different sports where that does happen, where they're just forced to play this sport and they get really good, but they never really wanted to do it.
I don't think I ever dealt with that. I think it at the college level at Berkeley and UC Irvine and UCLA at that level, I think those kids have been weeded out since then. Mm-hmm. I think that the one common thread that all the players at the college level have, at that level anyway, is that they do love baseball. It's not that if you love baseball, you get to go to play at UCLA or USC or LSU. But if you don't love baseball, you won't make it that far.
Yep.
I mean, I do know that. So I think a lot of those kids, because there's so much failure in baseball, that those kids get weeded out, even if they're talented, but they don't particularly like it. They find other ways of getting out of the sport early on.
Do you still follow that level closely, the D1 college or Major League Baseball or the individuals that you used to coach?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I go and check every Monday and see who won what series and who played where and all of that in terms of the college baseball. The Major League level, I actually probably follow Major League Baseball more now than I did when I was coaching, just because I have more time to think about it and look at it and check box scores and see who's doing well. In terms of players that I coached that are still playing, God, there's only a couple left.
Is it?
I mean, it makes me feel, it makes me feel really old. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously Brandon Crawford, Cody Decker is still playing. He's in the minors. There was, I don't even know if he's playing. There was one guy at Sierra College who got drafted who was playing last year. I'm not sure if he's playing anymore. So there's not many left. I mean, there was a group for a little while. I mean, I think ultimately from the time I started coaching until the time I was done, I think it's over 20 players that I coached and ended up playing Major League Baseball. Actually, I saw Alan Craig. Alan Craig is playing still. He was in a spring training game the other day playing first base for the Padres. So Alan Craig can still be on that list of guys that I coached. They're still playing.
Good. Yeah, I saw that. And for those people listening that aren't baseball fans, these names mean nothing probably. Right. But the people that know baseball, that's some World Series winning guys. Like Alan Craig won a World Series, right?
Yeah, Alan Craig had a couple of really good years with the Cardinals where he hit 20 plus home runs and 80 RBIs and hit 300. And he signed a huge contract with them. And then he just kept getting hurt. And he unfortunately didn't pan out to what his contract was supposed to be, but that was because of injury, not because he couldn't play, because he's one of the better hitters I've ever been around. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was just a short time in Alexandria. He wasn't there the whole summer. So,
and he came back, though, that 2005 summer and had a huge year.
That's right. He did come back after I left. That's right.
Yeah, these memories from baseball that I haven't worked in baseball now in, man, it's going to be about 7 years. So it's fading and fading further away. My passion for it and my ability to really follow it. But, these individuals that I got to know through my time, I think that's the thing that I'll hold on to most as I move forward.
Right.
Because I find, and maybe you do too, when you're close to it and you know people, it's so easy to care and want people to do well and succeed. Mm-hmm. But then as you get further away from it, it's like, I don't know, I can't really care that much anymore.
Right. Yeah. Some guy that you've never met from some place that you've never been to playing on some team that you don't particularly care about. It's not something that's worth paying attention to. So.
Which is, I think, when you're maybe a kid growing up, when you start to get attached to sports, that's what it is, but you still care about it. Right. But then as you get close to it and then move further away from it, I find it so much harder to really care.
Right. Yeah, no, I get that. I think for me, like I said, I think I follow Major League Baseball more now than I did then. I think it's just a way for me to kind of stay connected with it and feel like I, still I'm somehow part of it at a big level, just because I know who's in first place and second place and all of that.
Do you have big opinions on some of the ways that sport has changed at either the college or major league level with, I don't know, some rule changes and replay and some of these things that are happening, contracts, the steroid era kind of ending, it seems like, who knows?
Yeah, hopefully the steroid era ends. I think it is. I mean, it's pretty clear that when guys are 35 years old, they're done playing now, kind of like it was when I was a kid, that there was the rare Dave Winfield of the world who played and was still pretty good until they were 40. But the rest of those guys, they started to fade away and they're 33, 34, 35, and then they're kind of gone. And that's come back. Kent Herbeck didn't play after he was 35. He's one of your guys, right?
Yes, he was a 2-time World Series champion for the Twins.
So yeah, do I have big opinions? Sure. I think that depends on what it is. Depends on what rule change and things like that you're talking about.
So are you a purist, or are you recognizing that there needs to be some of these developments since technology has taken us to those capabilities of getting some of these things right? Because I remember as a broadcaster, and maybe you as a manager, I don't know what your opinion is, but when I would see a call, like even the Northwoods League, a call in the field that wasn't right, I just wanted it to be right. It doesn't matter if it's for my team or against my team. I want things to be correct, especially if someone knows that this is correct and someone else might have just seen it wrong.
Right. No, I think technology is important when it comes to baseball, and I think instant replay is a good example of that. That when it's implemented correctly, it can be it can really benefit baseball, because you don't have people missing the play at first base anymore, right? And if the umpire does miss it, well, they get it right. Mm-hmm. And what's supposed to happen is what happens. So,
yeah.
I'm all for it, and even things now with analytics and biofeedback and things like that hitters and pitchers are using and teams are using. I'm all for it. I don't think it hurts anything, and I think anything that might be to the detriment of baseball, the game itself will somehow even it out, and maybe things like you do implement a rule on you can only have 2 infielders on one side of the bag of to get rid of the shift and things like that. They might implement some of those things on a smaller level, but I don't think it's certainly going to ruin the game or anything.
I'm curious about. We started talking about this earlier about me kind of learning some things for the first time when I started to be exposed to some new people and travel a little bit. Did you go through a phase like that early on in your playing or coaching career where you started to really, you get out of California for the first time? I don't know if it seems like everything kind of starts in California in this country or the coastal cities. So I don't know if you're really learning much the further inward or inland that you're getting. I'm wondering if you started to see some things early on in your travels.
I think I was exposed to probably a little bit the opposite of you. I think I was exposed to people's differences going into the Midwest. That it's not San Francisco, it's not the Bay Area, and it's maybe not as diverse, and maybe people do have different opinions. Whereas when I grew up, kind of everybody had the same ideas and beliefs, and that's just kind of when you grow up in the Bay Area, that's kind of how it is. Even back in the 80s when I grew up, it was still pretty, everybody kind of thought the same way, and it was the California kind of thing. So I think it was more just exposure to people. I think on the other side of it, like I said, on the other side of the spectrum, that it wasn't eye-opening that, wow, there's so much more out there. I think it was kind of the other way that, wow, there's some places where there's not much more there.
Yeah.
And again, I don't say that as a negative thing. It's just a thing. But I would say that, I went through a little period of that. But I kind of appreciated it. I mean, I remember driving to, every time I coached during the summer, I drove where I went. So I drove from the Bay Area to St. Cloud, and then I drove from the Bay Area to Boston, and then I drove from the Bay Area to Alexandria twice. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed being out there by myself and finding a hotel or a restaurant to eat at, and seeing what was in the middle of Montana. I mean, that I enjoyed that. So,
what is in the middle of Montana?
Not much.
Okay.
Not much. I think I might have been in the middle of Montana when my truck got hit by lightning. I think that might have been in Montana. Yeah, that was an interesting one.
That sounds like a different experience than blowing a tire. What happens when a truck gets hit by lightning?
Nothing. It was just really bright, and it was raining really badly, and there were no cars around me, and I ended up in another lane, so nothing happened. But it's funny, I didn't hear anything, though.
Well, lightning doesn't make noise. Thunder does, but the thunder, you didn't hear it?
No. I don't remember hearing anything. I just remember I was driving. It was pouring down rain. It was a bad thunderstorm, and the wind was blowing like crazy. And all of a sudden, it got really bright, and my truck felt like it got hit by another car, and it shifted me over into a lane.
Crap.
And I kind of was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I think I just got hit by lightning." So nothing happened though.
The tires, I believe, protect you from any damage.
Sounds personally.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, nothing happened.
I'm no scientist, but I think that's how it works.
The car was fine. The truck was fine. It didn't stop running. And, that truck, I didn't have a radio. So it didn't stop the radio or anything. So
did you ever check, did the radio start working after that?
No, it physically did not have a radio.
Okay.
It physically did not have a radio in that truck.
That would have been unlikely then if a radio would have appeared.
That was actually through Montana. The speed limit is 85, I believe. And my little pickup truck could only go about 85. So I would just go as fast as I could through Montana and never let up. But there were no cell phones back then. And I had a handheld solitaire game, a little electronic handheld solitaire game. And I played solitaire the whole time driving through Montana until I hit the thunderstorm. And then I put it down. You
realize it was probably best to not be playing solitaire in the rain?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. There was, I put it away when it was raining. But outside of that, there was nobody ever around, and just me going as fast as my little truck would go, not breaking the speed limit.
Do you still have that truck?
No,
long gone.
I sold that truck to a player at Los Medanos College when I was coaching there. It had the engine was not in good shape, and he wanted it to fix it up because he liked the truck, and I sold it to him for like $200.
Wow,
yeah.
Good deal for him.
I remember his name.
I wonder in different professions if it's easy to remember all these names, but I know there's so many names that I would recognize because reading all these rosters and broadcasting all these games and getting to know a lot of them through the years by working closely with the individuals, there's just so many names from the past that you'd hear and you'd know exactly where you knew them from, like what team they were on or what league at least, what year.
Yeah, where you saw them play Yeah, Joe Stoiber.
Maybe he'll be listening.
Maybe. I think he lives in Florida now.
Okay, we can look him up. I wonder, because as I've left baseball and left working in sports, I've found some other interests and some other passions that have that maybe come to light in some of the other episodes of this podcast. I wonder for you, is that type of thing happen where now that you're not spending all this time in baseball because you can't or your situation has changed, do you find yourself being more curious about other things that you just really didn't have maybe as much time for back in the day? Anything come to mind?
Not really. I think a lot of what takes up my time now is my kids.
Yeah.
I have a job, whereas before I got to coach baseball, I didn't consider it a job.
Yeah,
I have a job now, and I have and between that and my kids, it takes up so much time that I don't really have anything else that has filled that up in terms of this is my new passion, this is my new thing. I suspect that when my kids move out, that I'll end up coaching at some local high school or something like that, and that time will then get filled back by coaching again.
Well, then you've gained a lot of experience as a parent. What in 10 years as a parent have you some of the lessons that you found worthwhile that you've learned that maybe someone else might be interested in
as a parent?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure all that stuff out. I think the biggest thing you can, let's see. Probably the most important thing I've learned as a parent is don't ever judge another parent for the way that they handle their kids.
Okay.
Because you never know anything. When you don't know about the kid, when you don't know about their situation, when you don't know about the parent, it's really easy to jump to a conclusion that, they shouldn't do that way. But you have no idea about anything about their whole situation or what led up to that parent saying that one thing in the restaurant, or whatever it is. It's just, that would be the one thing I would say is, boy, judging other people for the way they parent is a bad deal.
Do you think there's things that people would be able to judge you on that they'd be definitely wrong about then? The way that you look at that perspective, did you learn about it? How did you come to that realization, I guess, is where would that
I don't know that there was one thing that led me to that. I just know that it's hard. It's not easy being a parent. It's not easy having, in my case, two people that are 100% reliant on everything in the whole world from, Angie and I have to provide to these two kids. And it's not easy. Everything that you do as a parent somehow comes back to you're doing it for your kids in some way. So
I'm not a parent, not yet. Maybe someday, maybe not. That is to be determined. I know, though, living that type of lifestyle that I was, trying to be a broadcaster, big-time broadcaster, and you were working your way through the ranks of college coaching and trying to continue to improve and get the best job possible at that. Having kids, obviously, you mentioned that kind of kept you located in California at that point when you're going to have your first one. Did you plan to have kids like that? Was like I gotta get somewhere in my life and then have kids, or how does that all? Because I'm trying to figure that out. Yeah, when would be the good time to start, if there ever is a good time to start?
Well, I think both my wife and I, both of us had planned that yes, we were going to have kids. I mean, it was an important part for both of us. It was an important piece of our relationship that it was planned in there that yes, we both wanted to have kids. I think some of it, which sounds, I don't know if it sounds bad or not, but some of it was financially. We waited until we were a little more stable financially before we decided, yeah, hey, it's time to do it. Yes, we definitely planned to have kids, but was there a grand master plan of timing and all of that? No, it was just kind of, hey, I think it's time.
Okay.
So, and then kind of for my daughter was the same thing. My son was almost 2. They're about 2.5 years apart. So he was almost 2, and we kind of were the age difference between me and my brother. I have an older brother. And then for Angie, she has an older sister. The age difference between both of us is about 2.5 years. And we felt that was a good age difference for siblings. And so we kind of, hey, it sounds like it's a good time to go for number 2. I don't think either of us had a plan to go more than 2 kids. That wasn't really, I think, a desire for either of us. We've replaced ourselves and we'll move on.
Yeah, my siblings and I were 3 years apart. My siblings have kids, and at least initially when they started having kids, they were 2 years apart. So that kind of makes sense to me to keep them in a relatively shorter range of time so they can grow up together in a way that I know you hear about people that have siblings much different ages, and it's kind of for me it's a strange thing to think about having that big of gap in time.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my experience with that. I mean, like I say, my brother was 2.5 years older, or is 2.5 years older. I just know at this point, okay, my son's 11, my daughter's going to be 8 in a little while. I would hate to think that all of a sudden I have to go back and do diapers again.
Yeah,
I mean, and all of we need a diaper changing table, and we need the diaper genie thing where you throw the dirty diaper. All of that stuff we have to go get again and deal with all of that stuff again. The thought of that. Ugh. So it was nice that all of those things we got to use twice and then get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Matt, I'm curious, since we haven't seen each other in a long time, do you have questions about me, knowing that we're going to see each other today for the first time in years? What were you thinking about? You thought about me?
Well, I mean, I think the time gap always, the initial question is, well, how do you end up here? Last time, well, I know that you went from broadcaster to I would suggest runner of the Northwoods League, king of the Northwoods League. And then I know that from there you went to, you were working at the casino. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure you're still working at the casino.
I do.
How does that go? And then how does that morph into you now have a podcast and where have you went from the last time you and I really talked till now? How do you end up doing this?
Well, that timeline is correct.
I probably should have listened to all of your other podcasts, and I would have all of those answers.
Not really, because the casino thing, and I think I'll probably leave it in there. That's something I don't really talk about, but it's a reality. It's a casino I work at. It's a job there. To me, it's a non-career job, but it's been a good job for me. I'm very stable in my life in terms of no stress. I feel like some days maybe a little bit. Like today, I'm changing a tire on the side of the freeway. Right. A little bit stressful. Day to day, I have a very stress-free life. I've gotten my financial situation in a comfortable spot where I'm not concerned with that. I travel a lot. I don't know if you know much about that. I think I've told you. We've talked on the phone a couple times in these years where I've started traveling the world. I think I've been to 16 or 17 countries now, all in the last 3 or 4 years.
Doesn't that scare you?
Yes, I think.
I mean, is that why you do it? Because it scares you? I mean, for me, and I think if I'm being honest with myself, it has a lot to do with the language barrier and the ability to communicate if I ever needed to. But there's something about traveling to that many places that is a little bit scary for me.
Yes, and I think in episode 1 of this podcast with my friend George, I think we talked about this in brief. The first time I was in a situation where I was really fending for myself with the language barrier was he and I landed in Barcelona, Spain. Okay. And it took us like 35, 40 minutes to figure out how to get out of the freaking airport. Like it was a real big culture shock of we don't know. We thought we kind of knew what to do. We didn't. And I think that's been one of the greatest lessons in perspective I've ever had is to be the person that is in a country where maybe I don't belong, quote unquote, right, and then know what that's like. Like the same way you suggest don't judge another parent the way they're handling a parental situation because you don't know that situation. Please do not judge someone from a different country that's in this country because you have no idea why they're here. Right. And if you've never done that yourself, you have no idea how hard it can be to try to make your way in a land where you don't speak the language and culturally you do everything different. And just trying to do the best you can. It's really maybe the best lesson from traveling internationally to a place that speaks a different language that I've learned that makes me look at people in a way different way and very accepting and understanding of why people might be coming to this country and the challenges they've faced in their own country and why it's so important for them to have a chance here, however we best can figure out how to do that.
Right. Yeah, like I say, just the thought of it is, I mean, scary is probably the right word. I don't know that it keeps me up at night, but it is. It certainly inhibits my desire to go and travel to all of these different countries.
And I grew up, my family, we didn't travel much. My parents have never, at this point, never really had the desire to travel out of the country. My siblings haven't really done it much either, maybe into Canada. And they might start doing that.
Canada doesn't count.
Well, it doesn't really count. But
I've been to Mexico, but it didn't count.
Mexico is easier because usually they're with all other English-speaking people in just a Mexican city. Right. But going to these other places is not going to be like that necessarily. The thing, though, is it's not who I was. And that's in part. There's a lot of reasons I have this podcast now. One is to just see if I can start something, create it, see what I learn from it. Another developing reason is to see people like you that I wouldn't have prioritized in the same way. And a third, among many other reasons, is I've learned some things and I can tell people one at a time, or I can do something like this and tell dozens, potentially hundreds someday. It's not that point yet. But at any one time, pass along a message. Right. And that's something, doing my very stress-free type of jobs. My other job, I drive for Uber and for Lyft, and I can do that whenever I want. And I'm kind of free to do whatever I want, to come here and travel in California for a few days. It's no big deal. I can make it happen. But why? Why am I doing anything? I feel like there needs to be more. Maybe it's the generation that I'm a part of. I'm not sure if we're technically in the same generation, but what's the purpose of my life? And I'm trying to figure that out, but I've learned some things and I want to share that with whoever is interested in listening.
Right.
And this seems to be a pretty good platform. So that's how I got to this. And because of the years broadcasting and many, many times interviewing Matt Jones previously, I'm not uncomfortable in this situation where maybe, I don't know, someone new to it might be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we did a lot of interviews.
We did.
Yeah, it's interesting because at this point, my current job is I help kids get into college. Families hire me directly, and I go and I work with them for some of them for a few months before the application period, some of them for years, helping them put together the whole brand of what they're going to be before they get in. And kind of similar to what you're talking about is recently I've had this kind of why, what am I doing with this? And so ultimately my hope is that, and I've begun the first steps of this is to create some kind of organization where I can do this for free for people, where, families with low-income families or kids that don't have the means to have their parents pay me to do it directly will have access to the information that the people like me have. And so kind of I'm in an interesting place right now, similar to what you're talking about, where, can I take something and create it and build it and turn it into something bigger than currently what I'm doing now. So,
and to help people that could use some guidance that otherwise they might not get. If not for me saying whatever I say here, maybe there's something I say that someone's going to hear that really registers with them. And if you don't reach some of these kids that otherwise can't afford to get to you, what's going to happen to them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've worked with two students who were fortunate to have somebody in their life that was able to pay for it, to be able to afford. So, a family friend paid me to work with these students, and it was so different working for them. They had a different level of appreciation for the whole process, knowing that they were getting this additional help and they were getting somebody who's done it for years and understands the ins and outs of the whole game that's played, getting into college. And there was a different level of appreciation. So that was kind of the spark in my head a long time ago of, God, if I could just do that and be available and pass this information on to people who, because there are great students out there who just don't have the financial means to be able to pay for it. And if they just had that extra little help, it might be, hey, go look at this college because they have a free application and they have all kinds of great scholarships and financial aid. Maybe it turns something into them where they don't give up on the process and they don't quit on it or end up stuck at a community college for 3.5 years trying to find a parking space, So that was kind of the spark for me that turned this whole thing into something that I'm actually moving towards right now. So
maybe it's just a point in life for us, for some people, maybe a lot of people, maybe everyone, where you realize what more can I do with my existence here? And especially once you're at a place where you're okay yourself,
right?
How can I do more for others that haven't gotten to that point yet?
Right. Yeah. No, that's probably a lot of it is, once you have stable footing, it's a lot easier to pick somebody else up.
And the podcast, I don't know what will happen with it, but it's something. It has a name, it has a logo, I have a website. Right. And how do I don't need 1 billion people to listen to it, but if I can learn how to get more and more people to listen, that will be useful in whatever endeavor I would take on after this, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a hobby technically, but it's also hopefully becoming more and more of a passion, and just conversations like this are pretty dang neat, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, I enjoy doing stuff like this.
Anything else that comes to mind about me and
your greatness?
I don't know about that. Maybe if you want to praise me for as many minutes as it takes, go for it. But I don't think that's what's going to happen.
No, I mean, I when you reach out to me and we were talking on the phone, I have my time in the Northwoods League. I think there are two things that if I could have done differently, I would have done. One is there was a 3-game playoff series between the Alexandria Beetles, who I'm wearing the sweatshirt right now.
We're going to get a photo here shortly that people can see on People I Know Show's Facebook and Instagram pages.
Yes, so I am wearing the Beetles. Now the Beetles don't exist anymore, but it was the Beetles against the St. Cloud River Bats, who do not exist anymore.
Yes, not by that name.
And it was a 3-game playoff series, and it was probably the best 3 consecutive games I've ever been a part of. And I wish somebody would have filmed or videoed or some way recorded those games, have those available to go back and watch, because it was just, particularly the game in Alexandria where Ringo, the mascot beetle, climbed up the stadium and was standing on top of the stadium. And yeah, that whole, that's number one. Number two is your first year, 2002, our first year, you and Gabe Winslow did the radio games. And I always enjoyed, laughed at, was amused by you and Gabe going back and forth with one another. And I wish that there were some recordings of those.
There probably isn't, but I do have some cassette tapes. Yes, cassette tapes of.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Of that era, I think I might have some. Actually, I'd have to look. I don't know,
because and I know. So 2002, 2003, I was there. 2004, I don't think those games were broadcast over the internet yet. I still think they were only broadcast locally via the radio station.
02 and 03 was only on the radio station.
Okay. And then 2005, I think, is when it started being broadcast over.
It was 04, 05, and 06 was only on the internet. There was a shift there where there wasn't a radio station that wanted the games, or they couldn't work out a deal, so we just moved to internet only. That was kind of a time where that was just starting to happen.
Yeah.
And now it's, anything you ever want to watch, basically, any event of that level, you'll find usually video too. And like in the Northwoods League now for years, they've had video as well. But yes, back in those days, that was just the forward thinking wasn't quite there for any of us to get video of that playoff series.
But I would imagine those 04, 05 over the internet, there's probably much more record of those somehow.
Of the audio?
Games. Yeah.
For instance, yes, I think I have a lot of it, but I haven't thought about it in years, because any individual game becomes kind of meaningless unless there's a real big event there that was worth looking back to hear. There's so many games. I figure 60 some games a season. I'd have 300 plus broadcasts in that league alone, and I've done many other broadcasts elsewhere where there are very few games that stand out. The one that you mentioned, the playoff game in Alexandria, that was one of the more exciting victories that I was able to call for the team that I was working for. But then, of course, the next night we lost, and then it's this is it.
I think all three of those games, the home team was winning going into after the seventh inning. Or no, I'm sorry, the home team was losing going into the eighth inning, and the home team ended up winning the game, either in the eighth, ninth, or I think it was the 11th in St. Cloud.
Which in baseball, that's about as exciting as it gets for the home fans to see a late playoff come from behind victory.
Yeah, I mean, those three games were just absolutely, I don't know. Like I say, for 3 consecutive days to have that happen, it was the most exciting 3 consecutive games I've ever been a part of. That's for sure. Yeah, and we had some good players on that team. We had some good people in that 03 team, and that was a fun season.
You're the first person in my couple dozen episodes so far that is connected to that, and I'd imagine more people will come out. Now, the way you've mentioned Gabe Winslow I haven't seen him since 2002. I have no idea what's going on with him.
I don't think I've spoken with him since the last time. Sorry, Gabe. Good luck, man. See you later. And
that's what happens with that.
Right.
You spend all this time with these people, but then everyone's just there for the summer, basically everybody, and then we all go our separate ways, and some of us come back, and many people don't come back to do whatever. And so I have no idea. Right. But now I guess I'll have to see if I can reach out to him and at least tell him that this conversation exists and his name's involved. Sometimes I don't know if we should be mentioning people's names, but then again, I don't know.
Didn't say anything bad about
him.
I like Gabe.
Yeah,
you guys, like I say, the two of you guys would go back and forth with some mundane thing at the Old Country Buffet in Wausau, Wisconsin, and it would just crack me up. And I just the whole thing. You guys were a good duo.
Man, that was a long time ago, but yeah, that was neat. Now time for the Being Wrong segment here with Matt Jones. Matt and I first knew each other in our time with the Alexandria Beetles. I don't know if the sweatshirt is visible there.
Beetles.
Many years ago, I was the broadcaster. Matt was the field manager for the team for my first 2 seasons, 2002, 2003. Just had our podcast conversation here. And as I've done before in the Being Wrong segment, I like to record video of it. Matt, looking back at your life, what's something that you can say now that you were wrong about?
Well, I think if I were to, if I could go back as the older guy now and talk to my younger coaching self, I think the one thing I would say is don't be so quick to try and impose change on people. I think the one thing that I really learned over time is that while people do change, they have to want to. And, when I was coaching when I was young, particularly when I was at Los Medanos College, which is a junior college, there were some really physically talented kids. And they may not have had the best work ethic, or they may not have made the best decisions off the field, and they may not have behaved a certain way. And I always felt like I could make them act differently. And I think the thing that I was wrong about with that is that I don't think you can do that with people. I think that people will change, like I said, but I think they have to want to, and they have to kind of come to that conclusion on their own. And I think that as I got older as a coach, and now even older as a parent, but also as somebody who my job, I consider myself kind of like an academic coach now, is instead of enforcing that change on people, is just be a good role model for when they decide it's time for them, that maybe it's something that they can pick something from the way that I do things that they can implement for themselves.
And what would you say to someone that at this point they're trying to change, but they don't know how? Like people, I think there are people that are trying to improve themselves, but really struggle with it. So you coming in and telling them to change this thing, it doesn't work. Is there a method that you've learned that to help someone that's trying to help themselves, but just maybe hasn't quite acquired that skill yet?
Well, I think that somebody has to identify what it is they want to change. And they have to really want to. And there's a difference between saying, yeah, I want to do that differently, but really wanting to do something different. There's a deeper internal feeling that when you really want something to happen, that you get to. And I think that that's the first thing that they have to do, is get to that point of want to do it. Not need to, not have to, but really just want to do something differently.
Do you think back to your life where you were stubborn about change, maybe in some way, where you started to have this realization that change is okay?
I think I've always been fairly receptive to change. I think that it's something that, for me, especially when I was younger, doing things differently was okay. I was always fairly open to change, but I just, as it applied to other people, I mean, there were some players in particular that I can think back in my head that, yeah, I really was trying to make that kid something that he just wasn't ready to be. And I was wrong in the way that I dealt with those situations back then. And I think that had I just allowed them to be who they are and given them an opportunity to change if they wanted to, maybe it would have been different. I don't know that they would have ended up in a different place. Not that I think any of these people are in bad places, but I think it would have been easier on me.
Mm-hmm.
So
change is difficult, but I think that's, as we all get older, we have the ability to recognize things that we can learn from either being unable or unwilling to change previously, or like you said, knowing that you can't force change on somebody else.
Right.
I think that wraps up this episode, Matt, but those people watching it video, just kind of recapping, you and I hadn't seen each other now. I think more precisely, probably like 13 and a half years is the last time we can definitely say that we saw each other.
Right.
And this podcast, People I Know show, is about a lot of things, but I'm learning it's a way to see people from my past that I enjoyed having in my life that I just haven't seen forever. And he lives in California. I live in Minnesota. It's not easy, but here we are in some random library in the northern part of California having a conversation today. Fairfield. I guess it's not that random. All right. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to People I Know Show. Links are in the show notes for the People I Know Show Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube accounts. Leaving a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you might be listening helps me to help the show grow. So please do that if you have a few moments to spare. Please also encourage one other person to listen, or you can share an episode on social media. And feel free to email your feedback directly to me, Curt Karstensen, by using the email address peopleiknowshow@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.